Hello, my friends, and welcome to FISHTORY. So today I wanted to go over where are we finding the most incredible, beautiful new species. And, I've got some of my photo albums here. You can see some of these ecosystems in Borneo and Papua New Guinea, the Aru Islands, some of the outer islands of Melanesia. And we're finding incredible, beautiful rainbow fish that are entering the hobby right now. Well, the same thing is going on with, temperate water fish, even cold water fish and plants and animals all across the world. I mean, there are some incredible loaches if you see what's coming out of Yunnan province and out of Southeast Asia right now. There's just some insane uh, fish species that you may never ever expect to see, or you couldn't even dream up. And a lot of these are coming from very remote regions, or from regions like in the Congo here, where something that has the body of a crebensis but has this crazy color pattern. So same with, these new wild color tetras that are just, I mean, they look like something that was dreamed up by an artist and then cobbled together in like, uh, by AI or something. So what was my plan of attack to figure out where we could find the most of these new species? Well, I thought about it, and I thought about all the different terrains in the world and all the different locations in the world where this kind of creature could live. So I started getting into some research and looking into maps that could help us. And I decided right off the bat that I would need a map that is the same style in every research paper. So I'm going to need a Mercator projection. That's the most common style of world map that you're going to see. Digital now allows us to kind of scroll without scaling, and that's actually a better system. But when you see this map, you think, okay, that's the world, right? For the most part. And here we've got a map of the most remote cities in the world, or most remote regions, rather, in the world. And it is travel time in hours and then in days, in the dark colors, to get somewhere. So it's as much as, and this is if you had your own private, helicopter or plane that would take you there, and you had all the money in the world. It's still going to take you, even if you're at the nearest city with 50,000 humans, it's still going to take you, it looks like 3 days is kind of the max. And that's kind of deceiving because they said realistically to get some into some of these areas like in the Himalayas, it's going to be 2 or 3 weeks because you're going to fly into probably somewhere like India. Then you're going to take, a day or two ride on either commuter flights up into the foothills, and then you're going to get into a car for a day or two. Then you're probably going to get on a pack animal. Then from there, you're going to have to go to meet different tribes, get permission, and you're going to have to move inwards, kind of consistently meeting people, having guides, and you're going to have that all set up as well. You could just fly through with a helicopter in some of these places, but I mean, the logistics of that, the expense of that, it's just not going to happen, especially for researching fish. And if you look down here, the crazy part is some of these islands in Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, and specifically this big guy here, Borneo, and down Papua New Guinea, they are extremely remote. I mean, they are taking almost a full 2 days to get to, even if you had a helicopter, even if everything was as good as you could plan it to be. Same with out in the Sahara here, same with down in the Namib Desert, the Skeleton Coast as they call it, right down in here. And same with in the elbow of Africa over here, armpit of Africa, whatever you want to call it. I don't like to call it the armpit of Africa because the species diversity is incredible there. And the same is true going on over right here in Colombia and Venezuela, the northern Andes, and actually all along the edge of the Andes mountains. It gets pretty difficult to get to, and it's realistically probably going to take you half a week to a week at least to get there. And so these are regions that are not explored very often, and remember, that's to get to a city with 50,000 people in it also. And this research was actually really cool the way they did it. If you take a look at the way they did it, they did some research. Come on, pop up the right way. There we go. They did research and they actually charted out all sorts of data. I mean, here we have Western Africa, just to give you an example, and it's little black dots. Each little black dot is 50,000 people in a city. Well, beyond that, then they've got primary roads in red, so highways or two lane highways or wider, and then they've got secondary roads, so probably a single lane road, and then they've got tracks or off road in green, and you can see that's the majority of connections up here in like Mali and Nigeria, Niger, and then up and over in here into like Senegal and other like Liberia and things. And this is where we're finding an incredible amount of really cool, small cichlids and things that look like crebensis, but are every color you can imagine, things like that. Yet there's still a density of people here. There are millions, tens of millions of people in this region, and we're still discovering new things. So remoteness isn't always the best way to judge this. So what is the best way? So then I went back to the drawing board. I went back to my maps in my gallery, and I did a bunch more research. And I started looking at different heat maps, which layout or different. This here is the Nature Conservancy, the WWF, set up by these little sections that you see here. Each one represents kind of a major drainage basin of rivers or watersheds. And here you can see the different colors show you how many different species of endemic fish are. That means fish found nowhere else in the world, but in that area. And you can see places like Colombia here have all the way up to 387 species. Same with Lake Tanganyika and Lake Victoria, Malawi, Myanmar, Laos, and Yunnan province in China. Possibly places down in Borneo. Indonesia is still actually in gray. They just don't know how diverse it is. It could be the most diverse still. They really don't know about those islands down there. And that is going to take decades to fully explore all throughout here, even though they have assigned some colors based on preliminary data. And also they assume, that the Sahara is not going to have a whole lot of species diversity, that there are no endemics and things like that in this giant swath. And that may not be a safe assumption. Now we know that that was once a lush marshland. Maybe there are some underground cave systems and things that are pretty large, or aquifers that hold quite a few fish. We can probably assume that the Arctic and the Antarctic are going to be off limits. So we can kind of get rid of the maps that go down into those regions. And we can say we're working with the temperate zones of the world. Now, there's other maps that were put up by these agencies that show you things like freshwater fish species per water ecoregion. So, I mean, that goes into each ecoregion that there is total, and then dividing up all the fish in the world, all freshwater fish species, and then which ones have the most. And, they give you all these different maps of different things. There's species, fish species richness, so that's how many species are there in total that are unique, and that goes up to 880 down in South America, Central Africa, Southeast Asia. I mean, we can kind of see the hot spots are mostly from, the American Midwest or South, and Europe's kind of Mediterranean. That's kind of the northern region of things, maybe Japan and Korea, and the Central Steppe and Turkey, and then down south all the way to probably Argentina and South Africa, and of course then you got Australia, which has a whole diversity too. So you can kind of take away about half the globe due to the very cold areas, that maybe they're going to find some species, but they're not going to be interesting for the aquarium hobby. But they may be interesting, big sharks and things out in the saltwater. We're not interested in any of that today. We're talking about aquarium species. We're talking about new stuff that may enter the hobby. So what I did was I took all the maps I could find and I overlaid them over that basic Mercator projection. And I thought to myself, okay, how can I organize this data? And some of this data was also things like bigger regions. So I literally changed the opaqueness on all these maps and stacked them. And I traced it once for every time a region was at least in the top 30th percentile on that category list. So if there's 10 categories or if there's 5 categories, if it's in if it's a 4 or a 5 out of 5, or if it's a 6 or 7, 8 or 9 or 10, I went in and I lightly shaded it, and light yellow, then a darker yellow, then a peach, then an orange, then a red, then a dark red, or a bright red, I should say. And so the super bright reds right here are our most diverse regions. Now, with all this information put together, it kind of gives you an interesting map. It's a very narrow map, and it looks kind of funny because you're kind of cutting off some of the world, but this is where we're going to find the rare things. Now, the problem is, we know with the species density that, humans are already living, for instance, all throughout the American Southwest, and throughout the Southeast over here. And even though there's a ton of species, there's 650 species that live in, for instance, Alabama rivers alone, that they're largely known. Some of them need to be reclassified or split into new species, and there's probably a few that need to be discovered or cataloged better. But the same is true probably of that diversity map. So then when we break things down further, so what happens when we put all that remoteness over all those regions of ecodiversity and all that? I thought about that, and it doesn't give us an accurate picture either, because there's some parts of Southeast Asia, for instance, where you've got, for instance, in this half of Papua New Guinea, the eastern half of Papua New Guinea, there are over 500,000 people living there. And while that is very remote up in the jungles and things, that if you average it out to that island, it is not like the craziest remote area. So the density doesn't help us that much either. Same with like Borneo. It has some of the most remote regions in the world there. So same with India down here in Goa and the Western Ghat Mountains. We're finding more species there than almost any place in the world. Same with Myanmar. Same with Colombia. So you have to take into account things like war and things like economic hardship or infrastructure that just didn't exist. Things like the guerrillas that were fighting in Colombia for 50 years, or very, very harsh governments like in China that just didn't let people come in and explore. Maybe they've surveyed it, but it hasn't had a new sweep lately. So this map is only kind of helpful, but it's interesting nonetheless. So what are the top 10 regions? Well, I'm going to go over that in another video. We're going to go over the top 10 eco-regions soon, but I wanted to let you know my process in this video and why I think it's important, and that it's not just an opinion, it's not just counting up papers from each region. We also have to compare relatively similar sized regions. So if we're going to compare Borneo as a region down here, that's a lot of land on that island. That's one of the biggest islands in the world. So you could compare Madagascar, Papua New Guinea, but it's not fair to compare the Galapagos. The Galapagos are a little chain of islands out here, and not that there are freshwater fish out there, but the point being that we got to do apples to apples. So if we're going to do that, we can't say Colombia. We're going to have to say Central Colombia, Western Colombia, Northern Colombia. Brazil, we're going to have to split it into like 8 pieces. So I have done that. I've kind of looked at maps that do so, essentially. And what you have to do is you have to look at these water basins around the world, the drainage basins. And then essentially when you see a giant one, we're just going to have to cut it in half and give it another number. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Mercator projection does throw all this off. So the fact that the map bends and it's on a globe makes Africa look big, which it is, but makes it look huge, and it makes Africa look small, and it makes the poles look huge. Like Greenland looks like it's ginormous, and it is a big island, but it is not like 40 times bigger than Madagascar. It's more like I think it's like 6 or 7 times bigger with all its ice. And so yeah, the warping of the map happens, and so we also need to keep that in mind. And I've tried to do so with a program that lets you drag different states from the U.S. or different countries from Europe anywhere on the map and show you their size, just to keep in perspective all that for myself. Okay, with all that background said, now I feel like I can make the other video where I just say, here are the top 10 regions that we need to be exploring to find the rarest, the coolest, the most interesting and exotic fish, and for that matter, plants, animals, and, you know, bigger mammals, and even like cryptic species that we thought were extinct. This is where they're going to be. So this is my methodology, and speaking with other biologists and other ichthyologists as well, they said that this seemed like a pretty sound process as well. It's not strictly scientific, obviously, but this is what we're going with, and I wanted to share it with you guys because I've been laid up in bed going crazy, and been having a hard time speaking since the dental thing. So thanks for sticking with me. I know this isn't a flashy, great edited video or anything. I'm just explaining that, hey guys, I am doing research and what I'm up to, laying the groundwork for when I do release that video. So this probably won't get a ton of views, but thanks if you stuck around till the end. I appreciate it, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Much love, and hopefully I'll be live streaming again any day now.